This episode of the Golf Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Sign up with promo code GOLFSGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code GOLFSGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, D-Gens, welcome back to the Golf Gambling Podcast. If you're hearing me do the average at the top, it's just me. And I am actually recording this on July 4th, Independence Day. And the reason why I'm doing this right now is because, unfortunately, I am going away for the weekend. And where I'm going, the internet connection is not very good. We also have to pack up the kids into the car and, load them up, make sure they're okay. It's also my daughter's first birthday coming up, so we got to celebrate that. So I am pretty busy the next couple of days. I did not want to skip this preview, though. We obviously skipped the John Deere last week because it is turning to an irrelevant tournament. Based on the leaderboard I'm seeing right now, I think that was a pretty good call. But the Scottish, we're 2 weeks away from the Open Championship, and this tournament, is pretty difficult. Especially when the weather blows in. The winning score last year was only 14 under. It was really difficult weather conditions. The final round, the year that Xander won a couple of years ago, really difficult firm and fast conditions. So, unfortunately, there's only 2 years of data behind this. And, we're going to go over both years of the Scottish Open, 2022, 2023. They played it on the DP World Tour for a few years, but there's no, strokes gain data behind it. We're really just going to focus on the last 2 years. For the purposes of the preview. But unfortunately, kind of polar opposites about how the field was comprised. I think it has to do with weather, but we'll go over that a little bit. But yeah, so this is going to be abbreviated, by the way. I'm jamming this in today between dinner time and the kids' bath time. I have a hard out in about 45 minutes, so we are going to get through this pretty quickly. I will show you briefly the Google Earth imagery of the Renaissance Club. I'm not going to go into it in big specifics, but I'll give you the biggest points and details about it. And then we'll dive right into Data Golf, dive right into what they've been saying about this tournament, how the leaderboards were comprised, the proximity buckets, all that stuff. So we will do that right after our first ad break. So first, let's talk about, the latest episode of SGP Stories is up right now, and it's on our Patreon. The guys do a forensic file style deep dive on the Bobby Petrino motorcycle accident that cost him his job. So go sign up for our Patreon if you want to get hard-hitting analysis of Bobby Petrino, that really classy guy. And that accident he had, I think, about 10 years ago. And also make sure to check out the WNBA Gambling Podcast, as Terrell and Scott have started out red hot with their locks this year. So go listen to that. And we're also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Pick 8 is now live. You can create up to 8 picks, and Underdog will automatically double flex entries, so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. And with more picks, there are extra ways to win. The excitement is higher than ever. The best part, you can win up to 325x your original amount, and you can now use specials and boosts on all flex entries. So don't miss your chance to try it out before it's gone. Sign up today. Use promo code GOLFSGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. RNFFantasy.com, promo code GOLFSGPN. And we're also brought to you by Circus Survivors and Circa Millions. Circus Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Circa Millions, pick 5 NFL teams ATS each week and compete for $6 million or survive the NFL gauntlet to claim the $10 million prize. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with sportscontestproxy.com to save you $50 with promo code SGP. Don't have a trip booked to Las Vegas yet before football? The Ultimate Contest weekend is a great time to go out. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sportsbook in the world, August 22nd through the 24th. So go book your tickets out to Vegas. Go hang out with Sean and Ryan. Go enjoy one of the greatest weeks, out there in Vegas for this contest. Okay, got through that. Let's go over the Renaissance Club. This is the Renaissance Club in Scotland. Let's actually zoom out a little bit because this is a hotbed of golf. There are a lot of really good golf courses around this area. This over here is Muirfield Golf Club, not Muirfield Village, but this is the site of many Open Championships. Hopefully they'll be able to go back. They stopped going there because they didn't let women into the club, and rectified since then. So maybe we'll start going over there. We also have North Berwick over here, a really old golf club. I believe it's hosted the Open Championship a couple times. If you watch the No Laying Up Tour Sauce season, they play this golf course. Definitely, if you're going to plan a trip to Scotland, this should be on your bucket list. But there was this open built. It was owned by the Duke of Hamilton and Jerry Savardi, who was a Jacksonville businessman. I've tried to find out from my co-host if he actually knows him, because he's a Jacksonville guy as well. Maybe they rub elbows at the same bars and stuff. But Jerry Savardi was desperate to build a world-class Scottish golf club, obviously in Scotland. And he finally found this tract of land here. It was owned by the Duke of Hamilton. So in 2005, he hired Tom Doak, very famous golf architect, Memorial Park, I think Pacific Dunes, a few other really good golf resort, golf destination, golf courses to go to build this golf course. So originally, they were only allowed to build in this area right here. It's very inland. But what they actually want to do, Jerry's coveted this stretch of land over here. And the reason why is because, links golf is, by definition, a link from the land to the sea. And the golf course has to be by the sea. Well, this tract of land is mostly inland. So you didn't have any views of the Firth of Forth, which is this little bay right here. And they wanted to build out over here. The problem was, though, this was owned by the Scottish government, and due to environmental protections, they were not allowed to build over here until about 2011. They finally were able to build on this tract of land over here, and ended up creating, finally gave Jerry what he wanted was, golf by the ocean, by the sea. Anyone who plays it can see out to the water there. And, it's a pretty good piece of land here. There's also, as they were taking out a lot of the forest here, they found an old group, years of overgrown, trees and vegetations, but they decided to just keep it for character. It actually separates the 14th and 12th green right here. Actually, a little bit of a backstop. So if you are, if you overcook your ball, run through green, you might end up hitting this wall here. It also bisects the 18th fairway and the 5th fairway right here. So, but overall, though, just looking up here, it's very just linear, very right out in front of you. One of the critiques about this place is, people say it's not really true links golf. And, they have a point. First of all, there's not a ton of holes next to the ocean, obviously a big characteristics of links golf. But the biggest critique, though, is mostly with the greens. And unfortunately, there's no 3D rendering, but there's pictures online. You go on my preview column, there's going to be some videos. You can see how the greens are built. But, a true links, Scottish links green, relatively flat. You can bounce the ball up to it, pretty large, and these are very large greens too, but they're very severely undulated. And it's harder to bounce the ball up to the green if you're in the rough or so. And that's a big complaint about this place, is this is more of an American take on links golf. And, I think it gets a little bit of an unfair rap. I think it's pretty entertaining to watch, at least for professional golf. It plays difficult, especially when it's firm. The ball can really be rolling, especially around these greens here too, where there's a lot of severe runoffs. So, the last couple tournaments have been pretty entertaining to watch, especially when it's windy. But, if you're looking for true links golf, this isn't really it. This is just an American take on it. And I think, when you look at the leaderboards that we'll go in a little bit, it's definitely more of an American flavor. Like, with the Open Championship in a couple of weeks, it's more of your precise ball strikers. And this is definitely not really that. It's definitely more of an American flavor on these leaderboards. And we'll go over how those leaderboards looked like, in case you forgot, in a little bit. So why don't we take another break? And then we will go over data golf, and we'll go over what's worked there, what hasn't, how the leaderboards have shaped up, and we'll go from there. All right. So if you plan on watching the Scottish Open next weekend, then download Rhythm. Rhythm's golf features makes it easier than ever to find the best betting opportunities for the Scottish Open by letting users create custom betting models and instantly see bet recommendations for outright winners, top 5, top 10, and top 20 finishers. Rhythm presents these bet recommendations in a menu-like format, making it easy to see where your models agree and helping you feel confident in your betting decisions. Rhythm also features an AI caddy, which gives bettors a chance to see every single golfer in the field simulate performance thanks to Rhythm's powerful AI algorithm. And you can use this to find huge plus money betting opportunities throughout every tournament. Rhythm is the ultimate golf betting and DFS companion. Download now and start a free 7-day trial and bet smarter on the Genesis Scottish Open. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm and sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, let's get rid of this. Let's pull up data golf here. So, like I mentioned, the GCSA, they don't come out with a tournament fact sheet, but this is a Tom Doak design. The other Tom Doak on the PGA Tour is Memorial Park. Kind of similar features, big undulating greens, pretty driver heavy. This is a very driver heavy golf course, as not only the data suggests, but just, looking at this golf course just in general, though, everything's really out in front of you. There's not really a ton to dissuade you from not pulling driver. It's not like next week when this comes out on Sunday, next week at Royal Troon, there definitely are deterrents for pulling driver. Not so much here. They added some mounds off the fairway to make it a little more challenging. There's some pop bunkers you definitely don't want to hit it in. I know a couple of years ago, I think John Rahm ended up in this bunker right here. Had a lot of trouble getting out. But if you keep the ball in the fairway, even in the rough, though, it's not a big penalty. It's really all in front of you, especially with firm. Fairways are relatively wide. You can just hit it out there. So, it's about 7,050 yards on the scorecard, par 71, I think. Par 70, I'm sorry. So, par 70, about 7,057, 7,100 yards. Sometimes they play with the yardage a little bit, depending on the weather conditions. And I want to talk about that right now. So, the two Scottish Opens that we had there for the PGA Tour, since it was co-sanctioned with the DP World Tour a couple of years ago, a little bit different. 2022, really difficult. One of the most difficult tournaments of the year. Xander Schauffele won it, I think, 7 under, and the wind was absolutely howling and whipping all week long. Average score that week was about plus 1.9, one of the more difficult tournaments that year on the PGA Tour. And it played as one of the most difficult par 4s for scoring on the PGA Tour that year. As far as, par 5s, it was the 8th toughest, 6th toughest with the par 3s. And, with its proximity with the water and Scottish weather and how firm the golf course was playing, both last year and this year, when the wind is whipping, it can be very tough conditions. And that was shown in 2022. Last year, though, not quite as difficult, at least for the first 3 rounds. And going back even to some of the Genesis Scottish Opens at Renaissance, when it was just the DP World Tour, there definitely were tournaments that these guys really lit it up. I think the year that Bernd Wiesberger won, maybe he played someone in a playoff. I don't know if he won or he came in second, but I think the winning score that year was like 18 or 19 under. So that's one end of the spectrum. But on the other end of the spectrum, you got the COVID year in 2020 that was actually played in September, and the opening round was really pristine. I think Lee Westwood, led the first round at like 8 under, and then just horrible weather came in. I think the winning score ended up being 10 under. Aaron Rai beat Fleetwood in a playoff. So we saw kind of similar conditions last year with this tournament where, for most of the tournament, it was relatively easy scoring conditions. I think it played a little bit under par overall, but the last round, though, the wind kicked up, the rain was up. They actually moved the start times, I think, of the Scottish Open up a little bit just to make sure they got it in on time because the weather is going to be really bad. Well, they end up still playing in pretty bad weather. The 18th hole here, I can go back to this. It was playing into the wind, and they actually just built a plaque for Rory. Maybe that'll give him a little bit of a confidence booster this year after what happened at the U.S. Open. But he was in the rough over here, had 200 yards with a 2-iron. Now, usually Rory is probably hitting a 6, maybe even a 7-iron from 200 yards. Hit a 2-iron from here to about 6 feet. Robert McIntyre hit a really good 3-wood as well from like 210, 220. So that also goes to show too, when the wind is really whipping here, these guys have to hit just different types of clubs, and length can definitely be a little bit of an advantage, especially in these types of conditions here. But overall, though, for the tournament, though, relatively easy scoring conditions. So let's talk about where it's difficult or where these guys got challenged. Off the tee here, it was really difficult in 2022. About middle of the road in 2023. Pretty fairly difficult approach shots. We'll get to in a little bit. Really difficult to putt on, though. We'll save that. We'll save some of the data in a little bit. Let's talk about driving, though. So I mentioned that, there's not really a ton of deterrence from pulling driver here, just based on the layout of the holes, and it kind of shows in the data. The average driving distance is about 294, one of the longer lanes on the PGA Tour. The driving accuracy rates, though, relatively low. I would attribute that more to the firm conditions. Once the ball hit the turf, it really just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. But still, these guys are pulling driver pretty much everywhere here. But, in 2022, the average driving accuracy rate was below 50%. In 2023, about 54%. But even despite that, not a big significant penalty for missing the fairway here. Only about a quarter stroke difference between your score on the hole if you missed a fairway versus you were in the fairway. As far as ranking, that was 37th out of 38th. Lowest in 2022, 43 out of 45 as far as severe penalty in 2023. So just not a ton of penalty for missing a fairway, even if, at the Renaissance Club the last 2 years. Doesn't seem like there's a big penalty for missing in the rough. I know a couple years ago they grew out the rough, but maybe because the PGA Tour is now there, maybe they put their thumbs on the scales, maybe cut it down a little bit. Maybe the fact that it was just really firm conditions and the regulation rate is relatively low. It's fairly difficult approach shot, especially with the wind. Anyway, there just isn't any big penalty for being in the fairway or the rough because, you can still miss a green from either location. Non-rough penalties, though, very high. These are probably attributed to pot bunkers that if you do find yourself in, you can be in a world of hurt. There's also those mounds with those pretty thick fescue on it too. That also provide a little penalty. But this is mostly if you find yourself in a pot bunker off the tee at the Renaissance Club, you're probably either just punching out and you're going to have maybe 100, 120 yards for your third. You're not going to be anywhere close to the green. There was a big penalty for missing in that area. But as long as you kind of avoid the pot bunkers with the drives, and you kind of blast it everywhere. There's not a ton of penalties to be had either. So, it's kind of just bombs away at this point. Again, there's no bottlenecking of the fairway in order to prevent, force you to basically lay up. It's just pick a target, hit driver, hopefully goes straight. Even if it doesn't go straight, as long as it's in the rough, you can draw a pretty good lie and go from there. As far as approach shots go, fairly difficult. Approach shots back in 2022 that I would attribute as to the win. One of the more difficult from under 150 and over 150 that year in 2022. Last year, not as difficult, but still, compared to the all the golf courses on the PGA Tour, 13th most difficult from under 150 out of 45 golf courses last year. 26th, so middle of the road from over 150. I would probably attribute a lot of that to just the significant undulation of the greens, the firm nature of the greens too, the wind as well, especially in the final round. So, and that's something to just keep in mind here. Obviously, it's too early to figure out what the type of weather you're going to see next year or coming up. Scottish weather can change in a day. So, but sorry, there are fireworks going on right now. I thought a tree was actually falling on my garage, so I had to look out. But no, fireworks are just happening right now. So sorry, I got distracted there. But as far as the green regulation rate goes, very low. in 2022. Obviously, with the bad weather, the green regulation rate was sub 60%. Last year was 65%, but I know in that final round it was very difficult conditions. And still, compared to, every golf course played on the PGA Tour, they are still middle of the road. So even in better weather conditions, these are still fairly difficult approach shots, especially from under 150. As far as around the green conditions go, not a ton of challenge trying to get up and down from the fairway. You would think with tight lies might be a little bit of a problem, but kind of like with Memorial Park, you can putt from off the green. So that takes a little bit of the challenge away from trying to chip off these really tight lies. The rough doesn't seem to be all that penal either. So, it was actually the easiest trying to get up and down from rough area last year. From bunkers, I don't know why this is the case. It was the 5th toughest to get up and down in 2022 from a greenside bunker, but it was one of the easiest last year. I don't know why. That seems very backwards, but I don't know. Maybe it's weather related. Who knows? And then putting. So this is the big challenge of this place is putting on these greens. They are big, they're significantly undulate, but they're slow too. They had the slow, fescue, really tough to putt on and get the speed right on this stuff. It is the toughest greens to putt on from under 5 feet. So you think about, okay, even more than like Torrey Pines with the POA or Pebble Beach, like those are typically when you look at this measure here, some of the toughest greens to putt on. It's actually the Renaissance Club is the toughest to putt on from under 5 feet. Very difficult to putt on between 5 and 15 feet as well. It was the 4th most difficult to putt from 5 to 15 feet last year, 12th most difficult from 2022. Over 15 feet, again, kind of like with the bunkers, it was 10th most difficult in 2022, probably because of the wind. It makes it a little more difficult to putt from longer range. 37th last year, not as much wind. Maybe it has something to do with that. So let's go now to the course fit tool. Here's the problem with this. If you like relying on this particular tool from Data Golf, let's get rid of this abomination of a golf course fit tool. I don't want to ever talk about the TPC Deer Run on this podcast. All right. Where's Run? Here we go. So the problem is everything is de-emphasized as far as a predictive skill set. It's, less predictive for drive. Well, it's actually about as predictive. Driving distance is about as predictive to the average PGA Tour golf course, but it's not like anything, significantly stands out. Driving accuracy, definitely not a correlative skill set. Iron play, not correlated. Around the green, not correlated. Putting, not correlated. So really, like nothing's correlated here. I think what's going on is because there's DP World Tour leaderboards at the Renaissance Club, I think this is in this data. So, and those guys overall that play the tour are weaker than PGA Tour golfers. So I think it's actually more valuable to do 2 things. One, look at the similar courses that Data Golf offers, because there's actually, I think, a prevailing theme with a lot of these. So, the most correlated golf course, PGA National, which even though there's a lot of water and a lot more penal in this place, and you're still hitting driver a lot, unless, except for a few holes on, well, I guess that's actually not true. But you got driver pretty well there. But the rest of them, though, Grand Reserve, pretty driver heavy, Accordia driver heavy, Silverado driver heavy, Detroit Golf Club, you're pulling driver pretty much everywhere. Memorial Park, there's the Tom Doak connection right there with the big undulating greens, driver heavy right there. Not a big penalty for missing the fairway at that golf course. 9 Bridges, fairly wide golf course, driver heavy. TPC Craig Ranch is blasted everywhere. Riviera, even though it's a difficult golf course, driver heavy. Not a big penalty for missing a fairway because the approach shots are just difficult in general there. That's a good comp to use. Pinehurst number 2, again, just blasted everywhere. TPC Summerlin, Trinity Forest. So a lot of really driver-heavy golf courses with less of a penalty for missing the fairway than you might think, or just not existent, are pretty good places probably to look at. And then just looking at the leaderboards of the Scottish Open, the last 2. So let's go back to 2022. Xander Schauffele wins at -7. Kurt Kitayama next to him at -6. So you got Tom Kim, who this was before Tom Kim really broke out on the PGA Tour. But you got Fleetwood Cantlay, Cameron Tringali, who back then had a little bit of pop, fired actually a 61. One of the most incredulous opening rounds, or just just first round leaders you can think of, just because I think the average score was 2 over in this round, and Tringali shot 9 under. So he beat the field by 11 strokes that day. One of the most bizarre first round leaders you can have. Ends up just, shooting 6 over the rest of the way. That's how difficult the scoring conditions were. But, he has a little bit of pop. Fitzpatrick at T6. This is when Fitzpatrick was, gaining some distance as well. You got Thomas Detry, got some length. Dean Burmester got some length. Spieth was starting to add some length to his game back then. Rasmus Højgaard, big bomber. Smalley's got some pop. Ryan Palmer, Max Homa, Joaquin Niemann. Wyndham Clark is at 16 under here. So a lot of guys with a lot of length who really like hitting driver and drive the ball pretty well. Even Tom Kim, he drives the ball pretty good. He just hits everything on a rail, and with the firm fairways, ball just kind of rolls for him. A lot of really good drivers here in 2022. And the same thing kind of goes with 2023 as well. You got Rory McIlroy winning at 15 under, the best driver in the world. Robert McIntyre, he's a pretty good driver. He's got more pop than you think as well. Ben On, a lot of length. Scotty Scheffler, one of the best drivers in the world here. Nikolai Højgaard, Ryan Fox, Max Homa again. You got your typical English ball strikers like, Hatton, Fleetwood. You got Tom Kim again. JT Poston, Brian Harmon, which ended up being, I guess, predictive to Royal Liverpool the next week. But, there's a little bit more of an American style, I think, to these leaderboards, especially in 2022 here. This would be a leaderboard I would expect probably at like Riviera or something, not like a Scottish Open or like, anything or like an Open Championship, like Xander or Cantlay or Kitayama or, Dean Burmster's got a good finish at the Open Championship, but like, it's a little different than what you're probably going to see next week at Troon. But a lot of really good drivers do very well here. So even though the predictive skill set didn't really show that in the data, I think some of the correlated golf courses where it's very driver heavy and these leaderboards definitely edge the guys who drive it really good. Obviously, you got your Tom Kims and Fleetwoods. If you hit a lot of fairways, the ball's going to roll. It's giving you an edge there. But definitely length, especially with the not a ton of penalty for missing a fairway unless you hit it in a pop bunker off the tee. Definitely a big advantage this week. And I think probably you're going to shade a little bit more towards your, longer hitters, your better drivers. That seems to be work out a little better for you if you tended to, basically favor those types of guys, either in your DFS lineups or, your betting card, that stuff. As far as here's the unfortunate part. Let's start with within event correlations. And unfortunately, it kind of tells you 2 different things. So last year, everything is de-emphasized as far as what you did in tournament was not as impactful towards your total strokes gained as the average PGA Tour golf course. Maybe it's because it wasn't that the weather wasn't all that bad last year. But as far as like what's actually important, it still kind of follows what, you typically would expect, iron play and putting, most impactful towards your in-tournament strokes gain. Driving next important with a bigger emphasis towards distance, which kind of we've been talking about as far as what you favor. Around the green, definitely de-emphasized, especially with the easier conditions around the green, especially with the ability to be able to putt back up to the, the putting surface. That's how guys were able to score last year. But in 2022, unfortunately, it is the exact opposite. How you drove it there really was no correlation as far as how far you hit it or how accurate you hit it, but there was a bigger premium than the average tournament with your iron play around the green and putting. Again, iron play and putting, most impactful towards your total strokes gain. That's not a surprise based on other PGA Tour golf courses. But this time, though, driving was definitely de-emphasized, even though you got a lot of big bombers and good drivers in here. It was just harder to separate yourself on the leaderboard through your driving. It was all basically through your irons and putting, where that wasn't necessarily really the case in 2023. So maybe this had to do more with the bad weather. Maybe the fact that everybody was missing fairways and missing greens. How you're able to separate yourself to save strokes, especially with tougher scoring conditions with your iron play around the green putting. So maybe that's something to keep in mind. Maybe we look at the weather forecasts. Maybe if it's worse weather, if it's similar weather what you saw in 2022, it's going to look a little bit more like this. If it's a little more benign conditions, maybe look a little bit more like it did in 2023. And then as far as the proximity buckets go, it's kind of all over the place. In 2022, there was a heavier concentration of shots between 175 and 200 and 125 and 150. A little more between 50 and 75, but it's a very small percentage, and definitely more over 250. In 2023, similar story, more of a concentration between 150 and 175, definitely more between 175 and 200, definitely more between over 250. So probably the range you want to focus on is between like 125 and 200, your mid irons in this particular range. Obviously, this is the highest concentration just overall, but in this tournament, too, there was a higher concentration than the average PGA Tour golf course, over 250 as well. That's really about it. So I told you guys it was going to be very condensed. I tried to speed through it. Hopefully, it's up to par with every other preview I've been putting out for you guys. But that's it. I will have my full write-up with a lot more detail behind a lot of this stuff coming out on Sunday or Monday. So if there's anything I kind of glossed over that you might have more questions on, hopefully my column will be able to answer that. We will be back on Tuesday, Boston Capper and I, to go over our betting cards for this tournament. And then we are going to be 1 week away from the Open. Royal Troon golf course, near and dear to my heart. I really enjoyed that 2016 Open. I got a lot of good stuff for that preview. A big breakdown. I'll show you all the ways it's going to be difficult for it. So stay tuned for that. But once again, thank you for listening. If you haven't done it already, please subscribe to the Golf Gambling Podcast on Spotify or Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You get free videos for every single tournament. Excuse me. Go follow us on Twitter and TikTok as well. We put content there. And with that, we will talk to you on Tuesday night for this Genesis Scottish Open betting card. Thank you.